2 to 3 more minutes. We'll be getting started in about 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks for your patience. He's probably been buzzing around. Give him 1 more minute. Yeah. He did his. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse for the Blind. I think we have a lot of first-timers in this room, it would be safe to say, at this building. And I want to say I'm really excited that we're here doing this, what we hope will be the first of a number of forums about financial literacy and stability. So today we're going to be focusing on CalAble, among other things. And I want to kind of let you all know about a couple of things. First off, we have interpreters in the room, Warren and Xavier, and they are here up front. If anybody should need to reposition their seating for that purpose, please feel free to do so. We're happy to help you if you need any assistance doing that. And thanks to Warren and Xavier for working with us today. This is a joint presentation between the World Institute on Disability, the Independent Living Resource Center, FDIC, LightHouse, and we also have folks here from the State Treasurer's Office. And this is what it's all about, getting organizations together to make sure that we're helping those who need the support and the empowerment to look at their financial options. So let me talk about a little logistics and a little bit about the Lighthouse, and then we will get rolling. So we are in the multipurpose room here at the Lighthouse, and directly outside, if you did not get your carb and coffee load, please feel free to do so, but if you're going to do so after we start, do it quietly. Beyond that, back at the reception desk where you came in, there are several restroom options. There are restrooms in the elevator lobby to the left. And as you come back to reception, if you go to the right, there are individual use restrooms as well. We also do have someone in the building who has a coffee allergy. So please, if you have coffee, keep them lidded. Everyone will be all good. So this is an exciting event. You know, it was just over a year ago that we moved into this building. We had been on Van Ness Avenue for a number of years. A lot of you probably remember the iconic building. And we had a huge celebration for our move last year. It was a celebration that we felt was long in the making, and it was a real fun time. We marched down the streets. The Lighthouse stopped traffic last year. That's what I like to tell people. And though that's exciting, that is kind of the least of what we do here at the Lighthouse. We've been here for 115 years in San Francisco. And throughout that time, at the core of our mission, we are serving and empowering and working with people who have visual impairments and who are blind. And what we're talking about today is perhaps one of the most critical pieces to independence, autonomy, and health, and so many other things. We are in a place where many years have gone by, and yet we still see the number of people with disabilities who are employed has not drastically increased. But there may be some silver linings. There may be some exciting things coming with CalAble. This is a program that you'll be learning more about soon from Christina Elliott. And we are all about making sure that people have all of the opportunities that they can. The Lighthouse here, we're an organization that serves people who are blind and visually impaired, but we are also about getting people connected. And I think that's exemplified by the fact of so many different organizations partnering today in what we're doing. So if you want to learn more about the Lighthouse, there are a number of brochures up here on the table next to the lectern. And feel free to buttonhole me or anybody else here at the Lighthouse if you want to get a tour or learn more about all of the things that we do. Perhaps you have students or clients or people that you just know personally who could benefit from Lighthouse services. We'd be happy to have everybody come through these doors again. Let me go ahead and introduce one of our other partners here, the Executive Director of the Independent Living Resource Center in San Francisco, Jesse Lorenz. Jesse.
Okay, Scott told me I had to speak right into the mic. Can you hear me? All right, so I know my role. My role here, in addition to telling you that at the Independent Living Resource Center San Francisco, our mission is to ensure that people with disabilities are both social and economic partners, both in their families and in a fully accessible community. But I'm also going to wake you guys up a little bit. Are you ready? All right. Now, we're going to do a little poll. And since we're all about accessibility in this room, we're going to do a poll in an accessible manner, okay? So we're going to practice. Here, I'll show you what I mean. If you woke up this morning, please say aye and raise your hand. Did you wake up this morning? Aye. All right, good. Okay, you guys are smart and you're getting it. Okay. Are you here from an educational institution? If so, raise your hand and say aye. Are you here from a local government? If so, raise your hand and say aye. All right. Are you a person with a disability who wants to learn more about your economic empowerment opportunities? Aye. Awesome. Are you a service provider with a financial institution? Aye. Welcome. Are you a service provider to individuals with disabilities and or seniors? Aye. Welcome. Is there any other group or constituency that I have not mentioned that you would like to hear mentioned? All right, welcome. So we are going to hear some really great information today, and I hope that this is the first of many workshops just like this. We know in the disability community that a community that excludes even one of its members is not a community at all. And you can't be an equal participant in society if you don't have choices about the way that you spend your money. So, with that, I am going to turn it over to Christopher Keel, also known as Spike, and let's learn about economic empowerment. Who's ready? Aye.
Thanks, Jesse. I love the enthusiasm and getting people fired up and ready to engage with us. So fulfilled it brilliantly. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Before I introduce our speakers, kind of want to give you a few additional housekeeping items. We have all the materials for the day, the agenda. We have a handout that has all the registered attendees that their information and email addresses. So anyone maybe you reach out to or would like to after this meeting, we definitely want to breed and encourage networking and helping to build greater relationships, greater partnerships to support the communities and constituents that you guys work with every day. And if you haven't, just make sure you sign in. If we're not registered, make sure you can get your email address on there. So when we follow up, we make sure we're able to communicate and follow up with you guys. Any questions before we get started? We're going to have time later to have some more feedback and interaction with everyone in the audience, but want to check and see if anyone has any thoughts or questions before we get started. Okay, as we get into Q&A later, please be sure to use the microphone so that our interpretive services are able to communicate with everyone in the room. So I'd like to introduce Christina Elliott. She is the Executive Director for the California ABLE Act Board. In this capacity, she oversees the development and implementation of a savings program that will enable millions of people with disabilities to save up to $100,000 without losing vital state and federal benefits. Prior to this, I actually worked with her, I think 2 years ago or so, when she was the Executive Director for the California Secure Choice Retirement Savings Investment Board, where she oversaw the development and implementation of a retirement plan for nearly 7 million Californians who currently don't have access to retirement savings at their place of work. She's also commissioner for First 5 Sacramento County Commission, and she's bachelor's from Sacramento State, former alum as well, and she has a master's in public administration from USC. So please join me in welcoming Christina.
Up the
There we go.
presentation.
I
Thank
think
you, Spike.
if you press here, should-
Okay, awesome. Just to describe, for those that maybe cannot see me, I'm 4'11", and podiums are not typically a friend of mine, but I think I can see most of you. So yes, thank you very much for having me. As Spike kind of gave a background of me, my background is not in benefit services to people with disabilities. It's specifically pensions, retirement, savings, investments, some high-level healthcare policy. And what I've realized as I've navigated this last year in this capacity as the executive director for CalAble, my biggest obstacle has been earning the trust of the people that are eligible for this program, standing before you without a disability. And that's typically something that I try to do in every single space that I enter. Lots of eyes wonder, why is she here? Why does she care about this process and this program? And I won't spend too much time on it because I want to tell you about it, but I have family that are eligible for this program. I have friends, and while I myself am not eligible, this has been the greatest honor of my life and career so far. So as this is my 320-something presentation since I got the job 11 months ago, yeah, I would say my number one goal is to earn your trust. I am a government employee, which instantly sometimes causes people to distrust me just based on who I work for, right? So it's been one of our goals. So I'll touch more on that. But California ABLE is actually authorized by a federal law. And I'm sure many of you in the room are familiar, and I will stay high level because we have limited time. I've spent 3 hours on this before in front of an audience of 300. There's lots of details and lots of nuances, and it certainly isn't perfect. But as every new law, we are trying to advocate for positive changes. We're trying to educate lawmakers, policymakers, peers about what can be improved. But I'll go through some of those details with you all as well. So if I understand it right, Spike, we will save questions, or do you want me to allow for questions as I present? Till after I'm done? Perfect. Okay. So in 2014, President Obama signed the ABLE Act, and what that does is it allows states to go and create their own ABLE program or accounts. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and what these programs are and what these agencies are, depending on which state, they're savings accounts for people with disabilities to be able to save money and maintain benefits, essentially. Again, lots of nuances, lots of specifics. I'll try to cover at a high level, but that's the gist of it. The $2,000 asset limit doesn't apply to CalAble or any ABLE account. There are a variety of ABLE accounts available to you right now. We have not launched in California yet. I will get to that as well. So it allows states to create a structure. Here in California, we have a 7-member board. I'm actually not employed by the Treasurer's Office. I am employed and work at the will of a 7-member board. The chair is the state treasurer, so there's that tie. And we have an interagency agreement with the state treasurer's office for services like IT and admin that as a small public agency of 3, I cannot afford. So that's kind of how it's structured in California. Other states are structured differently. Some of the most popular states, the biggest programs are actually an offshoot of their 529 or their college savings plan. Some of you might be familiar with that. We have a college savings plan here in California as well. We are a completely separate agency from them, but in Virginia, they're the same agency. They're just 2 different programs. So there's some variety and choice, which is really important. When you get choice and competition in the market, it drives down the cost. And again, I'll get to that momentarily, but all of this opportunity, all of these options are good for people with disabilities when choosing this specific investment tool. And it should be considered just a tool in your toolbox, which will have other tools, and hopefully they marry together nicely. So our state law generally mirrors the federal law, and we'll get into some of the functionality of these programs. But the slide that I have before this audience that I'm on right now has very few bullet points on it. Our law mirrors the federal law. It's been kept intentionally broad. And right now, if you read our statute, we can only accept people from California. And that was just a timing issue. The residency requirement at the federal level was removed right when we signed our law, and it still existed. So we have some legislation right now that will fix that. But that is coming on another slide as well. So I kind of mentioned some of this. I had a huge deficiency in knowledge when I got this job. While it is an investment product and basically what I do for my work, I have all the skill sets that I need. What I realized was this vast amount of this void in information around benefit services for people with disabilities, specifically here in California. So we went on this statewide listening tour, if you will, which is something that I did for Secure Choice, which Spike mentioned before. Our very clearly message that we got was, for decades and centuries, people with disabilities have had programs and policies designed for them, and oftentimes with good intention, but never actually brought people with disabilities alongside the policymakers and the lawmakers to design the intricate details of those programs. And I didn't want to continue with that trend. So all the way down to the CalAble vision and mission statements. These were designed by people eligible for ABLE accounts. This was adopted by our board, but I'll read them to you if you don't mind. And these reflect what our stakeholder community has communicated to us that is an appropriate vision and mission statement for the services we will provide. So our vision is to provide greater financial security to Californians living with a disability, including blindness and deafness. Mission is to meet the diverse needs of our customers and their families. We pledge to be customer-driven, accountable, and a trusted partner in providing financial services. We also have a cluster of values that have been designed the exact same way as our vision and our mission. And those values are adaptability, flexibility, humility, transparency, accountability, trust, sustainability, collaboration, and integrity. Again, I don't often garner trust as a government worker without a disability in many cases, and that has been a goal to earn your trust over the past 11, 12 months, understanding that that doesn't just come without time spent. Also, sustainability. The state of California has not given this program or this agency an annual appropriation. And what that means, we don't have any taxpayer dollars funding this program. This program will be funded on fees. And I'll talk to you about that momentarily. But there, with the exception of Tennessee, every ABLE program has that same obstacle and design feature. And Tennessee, I believe, does have an appropriation from their state legislature, and we are all very jealous of them. But their vendor who does the investments for them, they do charge fees, depending on what type of investment that the participant chooses. So I've moved on to slide 6. Some basics that everyone in this room, I'm sure, is very familiar with. Before the ABLE Act, a person with a disability was not able to have more than $2,000 in savings without losing SSI benefits. And then here at the state level, there are many partially funded, partially state, federal funded programs that also have a similar asset limit. And I want to note that that limit still exists outside of ABLE accounts. If you have an ABLE account, it doesn't apply. You can have $100,000 in your ABLE account and still maintain your SSI benefits and any partially federally funded benefit, even if there are state dollars that apply. There are very few fully funded state programs that are asset tested, or there are some local general assistance means tested benefits that are solely state or local funding as their revenue source. In California, unfortunately, there is a $100,000 cap on that as well. At the federal level, aside from SSI, all federal means tested benefits shall be exempted from the $100,000. So Medicaid is exempted. In California, we have an aggregate cap of $475,000 to be able to be put into your ABLE account while maintaining Medicaid benefits or partially or fully funded federal benefits. So housing is an example of that as well. Confusing, I know, and there's a lot of information I'm throwing at everyone, but hopefully we can get through this, and then feel free to ask questions when I'm done. There is an annual limit, contribution limit of $14,000. You can only put $14,000 in each year, and that's because these monies are tax exempt. So when you earn interest on an investment or on your savings, the federal and the state government view that as income, and you have to pay taxes on those earnings. In an ABLE account, they're not considered income. Those are additional assets that you've earned. So you don't ever have to pay taxes on any of your earnings in your ABLE account, in your ABLE savings account. So what that means is the federal government, with the $14,000 cap, has tried to limit, at least annually, their tax loss, their tax revenue loss. So that's tied to the annual gift tax, which typically goes up every few years. So when that does go up again, the annual contribution limit will go up as well. I should note here that with the gift tax, it's a different process. The way that it works for ABLE is the person who has the disability that is eligible for the ABLE account, and I'm speaking for all ABLE accounts right now, they can only receive or put into their ABLE account $14,000. Outside of the gift tax, it works a little bit differently. as a person giving a gift of $14,000, it's applied kind of in the reverse way. But, as that increases, we would, of course, increase the annual contribution limit as well, as along with every other state that has an ABLE program. Okay, so some more ABLE program basics. An eligible person, which I'll talk about eligibility shortly, an eligible person can only have one account. As I've alluded to a bit, there are dozens of ABLE programs that you can participate in today. And you don't have to wait for us to launch. You can go open your account right now. But if you like us and want to come back, or maybe you like a different program in 6 months or a year, you would have to close the account, let's say in Ohio, and then transfer your money to whatever program that maybe suits you better, and that's allowable per the federal law. So accounts function like a checking and a savings account. And for those of you that are familiar with college savings, that's a big difference between us and college savings. The college savings are mid to long-term investing, while we are kind of a bank, and we require a banking service. And that's kind of new to this, not only this industry, but for people with disabilities, it's an opportunity to access banking services that are tax-free and maintain your benefits. So it's really exciting new structure that is not perfect, but a step in the right direction. The monies, though, must be used as on qualified disability expenses. And that is actually my next slide. What is a qualified disability expense? It's any expense related to the designated beneficiary as a result of living a life with disabilities. The categories are laid out in federal law, and as I mentioned, we didn't make anything specific in our state law, so we kept everything just as broad. We didn't narrow anything down. So the categories, there's many different things you can spend your money on. For example, housing, transportation, assistive technology, education. And the list does go on and on. An example of the diverse way that you can use housing as a QDE, if I may call it that. Housing could be you save up over the course of 10 or 15 years for a home, you buy a house, or you pay your rent each month, or you pay your mortgage, or you make your home more accessible depending on what you need, maybe wider doorways, maybe better windows. So if it makes your life better, if it makes living your life with a disability, whatever your disability is, better, it is a qualified disability expense. And it's hard for me. My next bullet point is if funds are spent on non-qualified disability expenses, they're subject to regular taxes plus a 10% tax penalty, and your benefits may be at risk. And then, of course, people are like, well, what is a non-QDE? I don't want to do that by accident, right? And there's not much information out there. We do have proposed federal regulations that outline some things, like you can't buy groceries, but then there's this, you can spend it on healthcare expenses. Well, sometimes you need to buy certain types of groceries to maintain your health. So we're working through some of these kinks and some of these obstacles at the federal level. But I argue that probably gambling is not a qualified disability expense. I probably can't buy cigarettes or alcohol. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing out there that says no for sure. But let's say that you or your family member, your consumer, goes to a casino and spends $3,000 playing blackjack. And what happens if the IRS finds out? Because right now, it's such a new program. The only way that someone could be discovered making a non-qualified disability expense is through an IRS, or a franchise tax board here in California. That's the state income taxes, through some sort of tax audit. We don't approve or disapprove expenses. Many programs actually have debit cards. Again, my program hasn't been designed or implemented yet. But the onus is on the person or the family member managing the account. So definitely want to keep your receipts, and probably on the back of your receipts, maybe write some sort of justification, because you can be audited up to 7 years, right? So that's a lot of remembering, wait, what was that? So maybe just a quick note on your receipt for whatever your expenditure was, and keep that with your tax filings. Another thing, which I'm jumping ahead a bit, but we also are not a healthcare provider, obviously, and I'm not a healthcare professional. Therefore, per HIPAA, I have no right to ask you what your disability is or anything about your health. So we won't be asking for any kind of medical records or any kind of information about a person's disability. The person will need to keep those records for themselves as well, and in case of some sort of audit. So I like to note that as at this point as well. But I also have my last little sentence there says benefits may be at risk. Well, how, right? So as I mentioned earlier, the $2,000 asset limit still exists outside of ABLE accounts. So if you were to go gamble and spend $3,000 and somehow the IRS finds out, they consider that $3,000 as outside of the ABLE account. You have to pay taxes, you get fined, and $3,000 is more than $2,000, therefore you could lose your benefits. So then we ask the IRS, well, for how long? And when does it get reinstated? And what if this was 10 years ago? None of those questions have been answered, and we're trying to work through some of that. But just to give you a heads up of where it's going, the conversations we're having around this, and it's not fully vetted, unfortunately. But we are having, some pretty good productive discussions with the IRS, with the Franchise Tax Board, and with all agencies that provide benefit services to people here in California that are eligible for this program. Oh, good segue. My next slide is titled, Who is Eligible? And this is one thing where there's some unfortunate specifics around eligibility, but we are working to make them better. And this is all established at the federal level. We don't have any control over this, unfortunately. You must have become disabled before the age of 26. And for people who have mental health diagnoses, that's unfortunate. And right now there's actually a bill going through the legislative process through Congress that would increase that from 26 to 46, which is unfortunately still a cap. But it's a step in the right direction. So let me give you an example here. Let's say that a woman who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia in her late 30s, early 40s, which is actually statistically typical of a diagnosis for that type of mental health diagnosis. But if she were to go to her doctor and get a doctor's note that states that onset of disability based on maybe medical records or behaviors when she was in school, there are certainly early indicators of mental health documented. A doctor's note stating that onset was before 26, she would be considered eligible. So it's not that the diagnosis came before 26, it's that the onset of the disability occurred before the age of 26. So let's say that you meet that standard. Okay, so she has met that standard. The next bullet point says, meets the eligibility criteria for disability benefits like SSI or SSDI. She clearly didn't meet that criteria because she had to go get a doctor's note. I'm not sure if it was as debilitating as some people with schizophrenia. It just depends on the level. So the next bullet point is called self-certification. If you've been diagnosed by a qualified physician with a physical or mental disability resulting in marked and severe functional limitations that are expected to last no less than 12 months, and yet you don't meet eligibility criteria for SSI or SSDI, you can just get that doctor's note and you are eligible. So lots of folks with autism spectrum, even some folks that have Down syndrome don't meet the eligibility criteria for SSI or SSDI. So they would get a doctor's note. Again, probably want to keep that with your tax records where you keep your receipts for your ABLE account. And in case of an audit, you would just provide that information to whichever entity is asking. It will not be us. There are some ABLE programs across the country that do ask this. That's their prerogative. Believe here in California that we are not legally allowed to ask that. So when you go and compare programs, and I have a website that I can provide to you, something to think about, what kind of information do they want from you when you sign up is an important question to ask yourself. So my next slide is, where can I open an ABLE account? And it's very small font. Because there's many. But this presentation is fully accessible, and you can put it through your readers back at your office or back at your home. And all of the links I have in this presentation are live links, so you can click on them and go to the reference. So I will, though, read you where you can open an ABLE account if you don't mind. Ohio, Tennessee, Nebraska, Michigan, Alaska, Oregon, Rhode Island, Virginia, Nevada, North Carolina, Kansas, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Vermont, Alabama, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. Florida, Kentucky, and Missouri also have programs, but only people who live in those states are allowed to participate, which is an odd business structure because those residents can choose any of the programs that are national. So I don't know why they did that, but it is what it is. You can compare programs at the ABLE Alliance for Financial Empowerment website, and that is www.ablealliance.org/compare-page. That's a live link. So I, again, can send that website link to you through this presentation. And then the ABLE National Resource Center, obviously, www.ablenrc.org/state_compare. And some things to think about, cost, investment type. As we're designing our program here, we have the highest expectations of liability, indemnification, and fees in the country. And we're on month 11 and we still haven't launched. And I think that's partially why. I'll get to that in a couple slides. But some features and benefits you see in the market. Again, we aren't launched, but we do anticipate that we would have some of these as well. You have the ability to contribute automatically through routine transfers from a bank account, and anyone can contribute to anyone's ABLE account. So family and friends can contribute to the person's account at any time. Safeguards are in place to make sure that, if you're getting close to the $14,000 annual limit or the $100,000 limit in a handful of years, contributions would be stopped unless indicated otherwise. So we want to make sure benefits are protected. The ability to invite friends and family members to contribute directly to your account via e-gifting. So lots of ABLE programs have kind of like a GoFundMe campaign option where you could post maybe on Facebook and say, I need, new glasses for my son. They cost X amount, and you get folks to contribute. Again, all the way up to any limit established. And I want to note here too that ABLE accounts are not considered generic resources. So if you're receiving benefits for some sort of service, regardless if it's health related or otherwise, regional centers oftentimes provide assistance for certain things or provide technology and a variety of wonderful benefits. They cannot ask you what's in your ABLE account before they calculate what they will give you for something. I used glasses as an example because sometimes regional centers will help families purchase glasses for a family member. And they do look at income. It's not asset tested, but they do kind of ask, well, how much money do you have? We'll try to help you. They aren't able to ask what's in an ABLE account. Sorry, I say ABLE a lot. So, if they are going to give you $200 for some glasses, you can then say thank you. And then you can add maybe $100 and get a name brand or something that you weren't able to do before. These are supplements to benefits. You can use these monies as a supplement. So it's there's lots of ways you can slice and dice the use of the money in these accounts to provide greater economic opportunity, to gain access to opportunities that maybe you or your family member or your consumer didn't have before because of asset limits. So something to think about as well. Deposits online or by check are standard regardless of the plan. Low fees over time. If you look at how much a college savings account cost when they first started a couple decades ago, they were much more expensive to purchase, if you will, than ABLE accounts are. What you see typically in the market right now, I named all of the plans you can choose from today. The cost ranges from $35 a year up to $100 a year, depending on how much money you have flowing through in or out of your ABLE account. This is an investment, and the hope is that ABLE programs, including California, will use this process of identifying the right investment as an opportunity to provide financial literacy to folks. Again, my background is in investments, and I was looking through some of the investment option pages in some of these ABLE programs, and you have a spread from anywhere between 4 or 5, which I think makes sense, up to 16 or 20. How is anyone going to make a decision around between 16 to 20 investment options? And all of them have different fees associated with them on top of the fee annually that you pay to have the account in that plan. So you can really rack up fees easily in these programs. And again, I don't have mine designed yet, but it's of great concern to us. We understand that there is a large part of our target population that cannot afford any type of fee. And what we've done there is, as Spike mentioned, I got my master's from the University of Southern California. And in the fall, when I got this job, after realizing how under-resourced I was, again, I have a staff of 2, I went to USC and asked if they had maybe a graduate student I could use for, helping us with our state regulations. As a brand new state agency, we didn't even have desks or chairs, let alone state regs, right? And what they ended up doing was dedicated 25 grad students to study California ABLE. They studied our statute, the regs at the federal level. But what I focused in on was help us help people who are very low income. How can we make this an opportunity for those folks as well? And so what they provided us with is a vast amount of resources and recommendations around potentially starting a nonprofit that sole purpose is to raise money for low-income people to maybe match or pay that $35 or $45 annual fee for CalAble. Raise money to matching grant funds, partner up and try to apply for grants for the administrative part of our program. So our fees don't have to be maybe as high as they have to be when they first start out. Again, I don't have a fee structure for my program yet. That's what we're working on right now. But that was something that was of high importance. Am I running over? I don't see a clock anywhere. I'm okay? Okay. So what we want to do is make the point, all of the programs right now are online enrollment. You can certainly request paper and do paper enrollment and send the paper in. Some plans charge you for that. So when you go compare your programs, look at all those small costs, right? How much does it cost to get paper checks cut for me? How much does it cost to, change my investment option? Per the federal law, you can change your investment option twice a year. And then some programs make that free, some programs charge you. So pay attention to the fees. And I think that forums like this, the FDIC, all of the organizations represented here, we can partner and provide assistance in that process, I think, over time and help folks, navigate. While these are very chartered waters, and there's plenty of people that are eligible that are very savvy investors, and then we have a large population who've never been able to save due to these asset limits that have existed and never gone up over the last few decades. So I've got 5 minutes. Let me tell you where we are here in California. We have been seeking out a contract with a vendor that will provide the investment services for us. We put out a request for proposals, which is a state contract request, basically. And we did not receive any viable bids the first time we tried to do that. And, 6 months ago, I was telling folks October, hopefully, based on the assumption that the financial services industry would show up. but they didn't. Unfortunately, we only had 2 bids. And with California, we have the largest population by 4 times over. So with investments, when you get that type of scale, it increases interest in the community, in the market, and it also drives down the cost. But we just aren't seeing that here in California. What I will say is we require that our vendor be fully liable for any losses to any of the account holders. No other ABLE program has that requirement. So vendors are weary to partner with us. We've been asked to loosen that language up. I, as the executive director, am not comfortable loosening up that language. One thing I learned from everyone in this room, because this isn't the first time I've seen many of you, safety, security, sustainability take care of me. So if I loosen up liability, I'm not doing any of that. Does that mean I don't get a viable vendor? Maybe. But I'm not willing to put my account holders at risk just to launch our program. You guys do have options available. And I think that there's a lot of work to be done in this market, and we have high standards of care. If they cut you a check for $400, we expect you to get that check within a reasonable time frame and for the amount requested. And if you talk about standards of care, indemnification, liability, fancy fiduciary terms, all of that means is you do what you say and my money's protected and invested properly. And we have the highest standard by far. And so far, no one's shown up. We're going to launch our RFP again. We've revised some language, but we're nervous. But, I think we've done some really great work. I think we've provided a lot of financial literacy over the last year. And I'm honored to be here with you guys and have this conversation. You can follow us on Facebook, join our listserv. Again, this presentation is fully accessible. These are all live links. And we can answer questions later, I guess. Or now? Okay. I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah. Oh.
Probably all off if you have.
Test. Okay. I'm Michael Manigo. I'm with Mechanics Bank in Walnut Creek, and I was curious about the aggregate cap of $475,000.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give an example of how that works?
Would you like to bid on our RFP as a bank?
I can't speak for that group.
I'm kidding. So the aggregate cap differs from state to state. Each state's allowed to set their own aggregate cap, and it's tied to the college savings program in that state. So Scholarshare Investment Board is our sister plan. We share IRC, Internal Revenue Code, with them. We have the same tax treatment, and that's basically where our similarities end, along with the aggregate cap. So they have an aggregate cap allowing people to save up to $475,000 for their children's college in Scholarshare. They don't have an annual, they don't have a lot of the same limits. Obviously, it's for a different population, right? But that is how we got our aggregate cap. So any partially federally funded program here in California, like Medicaid or Medi-Cal, and there's a variety of health benefits that are partially federal funded. You can have up to $475,000 and maintain those benefits. Yeah. Hi. Oh. I can hear
Hear
you,
me?
but I don't know.
Oh,
There
okay.
we go.
I'm Jamie with Adult Protective Services.
Hi. We met in the
Hi.
elevator.
Yes, we did. Can somebody have a special needs trust that's been set up for them and also a CalAble account?
Certainly.
Okay.
We believe that, and I think lots of special needs trust attorneys, or at least ones that are providing good advice, in my opinion, depending on obviously the circumstances, the ABLE accounts function and marry quite nicely with trusts. They provide some flexibility. You could change the verbiage of the trust, legal verbiage of your trust to auto-populate, $14,000 into your ABLE account each year, and then that way you can spend your money on a variety of things. Mm-hmm. Now, are there issues with some benefits by doing that? It just depends if it's an SSI check, but through a trust, you can add flexibility with your ABLE account.
Thank you.
You're welcome. you can also fund your trust through your ABLE account. So the monies can go both ways.
Hi, my name is Nahana Rogozen. I'm here from the city of San Francisco. Um, you said that for the eligibility criteria, if somebody has been diagnosed by a physician with a physical or mental disability that results in marked and severe functional limitation, can you just define that a little bit more? And if there are certain disabilities that may or may not make that cutoff?
That's a great question. And so that is actually pulled directly from the federal law. That's the federal law definition of eligibility. So we haven't made that more specific. There isn't currently, as far as I know, any disability that is exempted or that wouldn't qualify you. I mean, there is, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Not to my knowledge. I'll just say it that way. Yes.
Would a person still be eligible if they have a disability? They've been on benefits at one time in their life, but they're no longer on it. They're working, they're doing everything, and they're completely off the benefit. Will they count for an ABLE account?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I get that often. You don't have to be collecting on benefits to be eligible. You just need to be able to have been eligible for benefits at some point. Doesn't mean that you are taking them. Lots of folks are eligible for our program that have full-time jobs, have fantastic benefits at their work, as their 401k or a pension. I had one woman tell me that, while she does have a pension at her job and she does have great benefits and health care through her work and makes fantastic income, she views ABLE accounts as a way to as kind of like a plan B retirement based on her disability. She doesn't know if she'll need benefits when she's older. She doesn't know if she'll be able to work as long as she hopes. So it's kind of like plan B. What if I need benefits? I'm going to make I'm going to use a special needs trust to populate into my ABLE account and maintain my level, my quality of life. It's a way to maintain quality of life as you age.
Question over here.
I lost track. Hi.
Sorry, can I answer a quick question from over here? Is
Sure.
the functional limitation is SSI and SSDI? It's basically the same thing, except there's a work requirement and the requirement to not be able to work above substantial gainful activity. So it's the same thing as like SSI eligibility, except there's no work. Is that right?
I'm not a benefits expert, so that sounds right. But I think that the question is utilizing self-certification, what wouldn't be considered self-certifiable? And I don't know. I mean, there's certain I think like if someone were injured at work, let's use that as an example. Injured at work and were disabled, disabled all before age 26, let's say, just for argument's purposes, unable to work for 2 years or 3 years, that's lasting longer than 12 months, right? So that would qualify if you can't work or you can't do certain things or your life is limited severely enough based on the injury. But let's say that you can work again and you're no longer considered disabled, and you can go back to work. You recover from your disability, right? That happens. Well, what happens to your ABLE money at that point? You can't contribute anymore into your ABLE account, but you can keep that money there and it can continue to earn interest, depending on the investment you choose. There are certain federal, you might want to choose a federally insured option if you're going to be using this like a checking account to pay, monthly expenses. Or you might want to choose an aggressive investment option if you want to save up to buy a house or a car longer term. So if you are no longer disabled, your money can still earn interest. And if you become disabled again in the future, you could access that money. If you are never going to be eligible again, all you do is you pull that out and pay regular taxes on it. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any disability that wouldn't make it through a self-certified process with a doctor if there is a diagnosis of some point. I think that,
I think one question here. I think I have 3 more questions.
Okay.
Here, and then Jesse.
yeah, okay.
After you.
So I am a person on SSDI, not SSI. And I have a question about must be disabled before age 26. The doctor that I was seeing at that time, it was before I became disabled with the disabilities I have now, but it could have been, I mean, I was certainly in adaptive PE when I was in high school for various reasons. So would that be
Onset.
enough? Would
Yeah,
that-
onset. If you can prove to your doctor, you know, through some sort of, however you can, that you have progressively gotten to this point, that the onset occurred.
But the records from that time period would probably have been expunged. I don't know.
Yeah, like through your, yeah. That's
So I don't know.
difficult. I know.
Right. So
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. You'd have to, if maybe your doctor would just believe you.
well, the doctor I was seeing then, I don't know if he's still alive. I mean, I know he was retired.
It doesn't need to be the doctor that you first saw. It can be your current physician.
Yeah, I don't really have a current physician. I'm one of those people.
Okay.
So one of those millions of people.
Understood. Understood.
So I mean, I see chiropractors, and I don't know if that would really be the same thing.
No.
But
yeah.
is it going to be increased to age 46? I thought I heard you say.
So there's a proposal going through Congress right now that would increase it. It has not been signed by the president yet, though. It has to go through the congressional legislative process. Each house, the Senate and the Assembly. I'm not sure where it is now. I think it's in the next house. And then the president has to sign it before that actually gets implemented. So no, it's not currently law yet.
Okay, so it might be by the beginning of the year. It's not going to.
Depending.
And it wouldn't cost anybody any money, so there'd be kind of no reason why he wouldn't approve it.
The way that Congress and the Congressional Budget Office views this as a loss of tax revenue, so when you increase the age cap, arguably there's an increase in tax revenue because more people are eligible. So they put a ridiculous number on the bill and then make it difficult for people to support it. Gotta love politics. I know, that's just the reality of the situation. And so advocates are storming the Hill for a variety of reasons, mostly healthcare related. And we're trying to tell people, don't forget about these important ABLE improvement bills as well.
Yeah, my name is Jose, and I was wondering if I'm also part of the California Working Disabled Program, so which allows you to have more than $2,000 in resources.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Can you have an ABLE account and a, your savings,
Yeah.
regular savings?
Absolutely. I think the hope is for some people to utilize the ABLE account, maintain banking services outside of the ABLE account, and maybe potentially seek employment, or you know what I mean? And so then slowly maybe move off benefits of some sort. But you can absolutely maintain regular banking services as long as you're maintaining them at whatever level they need to be maintained at to continue to receive your benefits. So through that program, yes, you can have whatever. I don't know what the increased allowance is.
They allow you to have a special savings outside.
Correct.
As long as it's work, it comes from work related.
From your paycheck. Absolutely.
Paycheck,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you can still do that.
And would, like, upon death, you know, you get these notices, Medi-Cal would want to
So that
recover your
reminds
property, and what happens to your ABLE account?
So what happens right now? And I skipped the slide because we're running low on time, but right now Medicaid and Medi-Cal can claw back any monies that were spent on the beneficiary upon death from the time that they open their ABLE account, not before, but from the time they open their ABLE account to the time that they pass away. SB 218 will stop the state of California from recovering. And so that takes a big chunk of that revenue and puts it back into the person's pocket or their family's pocket to do with whatever they need to do. And then you name a beneficiary, and then that person, gets that money just like you would with a 401k or an IRA or something like that. So the same exact process. So we're trying to fight against that. The federal government is hearing about the Medicaid being a problem. I would argue that it's why very few people are actually opening ABLE accounts nationally. You know, so we're trying to send messages. We're the largest state in the union. Washington isn't really listening to much of what we say these days, but we hope that other states and us and everyone saying the same message, which is the Medicaid clawback, is actually stopping the legislative intent of ABLE being seen through. So that's our message.
Well, we're going to email out the presentation as well.
And all of that's in the presentation, yeah.
One last question, Jesse. And maybe Melissa, would you be able to possibly hand her the microphone right there?
Thank you so much for your presentation. This seems like a real game changer to me. We work with a lot of people with chronic health conditions that get worse over time. And sometimes due to the adjustment in health conditions, they're in and out of the workforce, just as a given. And you know what? One of the things that I think is sort of tragic is we talk about, oh, you went out on disability, as though you're never coming back or you're not supposed to come back. But it feels to me like these accounts could really change that paradigm, because oftentimes people do experience a little bit more disabling conditions. They plateau, they adapt, and then they're able to go back to work, maybe in a more limited sense, and put money into this account. So that's really terrific. My question is, can you talk about the accessibility of the services and how these banking services might be more tailored or more accessible to folks with disabilities?
That's such an important question and topic of discussion, and it's been the topic of discussion when I have more time with larger audiences, right? We did a survey all of fall and most of winter and asked that exact question, amongst many other questions. But what do you need to be able to actually utilize this product? And aside from Texas, no other state did that before they launched either. And we literally put those expectations into our RFP. So what I will communicate to this group is while they didn't want to be liable for your money, they certainly were good with providing the accessibility requirements that we learned from our future participants that they wanted. An example of that is right now we aren't, no ABLE program is able to offer face-to-face customer service, which is extremely expensive and would make fees astronomical to have a brick and mortar place. But what we said is this is very important for people, for a large portion of our population, to be able to access a person, not just on the phone. That doesn't work for people, for every person who's eligible. They can't sometimes hear on what someone's saying on the other side of the phone. And we asked, are you willing to work towards, line out a path towards face-to-face customer service? Can you get us there? We understand it's, not right away, but are you willing to partner with us in pursuing that goal? And all of the firms said yes. And some firms even gave us an example of how we could get there, which was very heartening. Of course, like the customer service on the phone, online, live chat, which I don't typically have a good experience with live chat. But, how can we make this better for our population? And, all of those things were put in and are a priority for California. I think there's priority for a lot of other states. And how are we going to be successful if we are not accessible? So I appreciate that question, and we definitely are working towards that. Again, we don't have a program design in California, but as an example, in Ohio, they sometimes even come here to California to meet with people if they get enough people. So there is a huge effort to be accessible and provide the type of accessibility dependent on whatever the person's needs are.
Christina, what if someone asked what the bill number is that's currently going through Congress?
Oh, I don't know that. I don't have that memorized because I had it memorized last year because I tried last year, and that's just ingrained in my brain right now. And so I'm going to give you the wrong number. I will send that to you, Spike. There's 3 actually that are going through right now. They're kind of like a ABLE improvement package. And so I'll send that to you. But all of the state bills that improve California ABLE are in this presentation. So
Well, everyone, please join me in thanking Christina.
thank you.
So we're going to sort of connect a few of the dots here and talk a little bit more broadly where ABLE connects with financial stability, economic inclusion, and the opportunities to support and collaborate and develop some potential networks and partnerships.
You're gonna stand? Okay. Hey, everybody. So Tom Foley, World Institute on Disability. Thanks for everybody for coming out today. Thanks to the LightHouse and ILRCSF, and for Christina for showing up today. You know, Christina, I remember when you first showed up at one of these at WID, and it feels like it was about 11 months ago. I think it was like your first week. And we really appreciated you having you there, and I feel like we've come full circle, you know, as we get more and more of the word about ABLE out there. And, you know, I really, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about it. And I think Jesse hit it right on the head, right? Like, this is a huge opportunity for folks with disabilities to, in many cases, for the very first time ever, take control of their financial futures. You know, for decades, folks with disabilities have been told, you know, you can't save, you can't plan for the future, don't even try. And I think ABLE just turns all those expectations on their head and is perhaps, you know, one of the biggest things to happen in the disability community in 25 years from a self-empowerment perspective. So, you know, one of the things we do at WID, we've been doing a lot of work around asset building for decades now, but one of the things that we'd like to do is sort of, you know, really break some of this stuff down and show how ABLE can be used in everyone's life sort of every day. And I had like 4 or 5 examples, and I was really excited about these, right? Because, you know, quite often, you know, people haven't thought about this. And between the questions and Christina's presentation, you guys hit every single one of them. So, you know, thanks for that, you know. But, you know, I just wanted to cover a couple of things. One of the questions asked, you know, how does this interact with special needs trusts? And that is just a great question. So the example that we like to use is like if I want to help someone who's on SSI with their rent or something, right? And I give them $500, that will negatively influence their SSI. Their SSI will be reduced statutorily by up to $264.50 if I just give them $500 or I write them a check or something like that. Same is true if a special needs trust was to, you know, pay your rent or something like that. And this is one of the things ABLE is really good for. You know, one of those qualified expenses is for rent or a mortgage payment. So in this case, you know, if I were to donate that money to someone's ABLE account, or if the special needs trust was to donate the money to the ABLE account, then there would be absolutely no problem in providing that money for somebody's rent. So that is, you know, one of the great ways that ABLE really works well with both special needs trusts. And then, you know, Christina mentioned this as well. You know, what if somebody wanted to buy a house, right? You know, one of the interesting things of some of the ABLE accounts that are available there is they have this crowdfunding piece. So, you know, maybe with $14,000 a year, you know, get friends and family to, you know, sort of crowdfund, and you could get $14,000 together. Maybe if you sort of planned it toward the end of one year and the beginning of another year, you could get, you know, as much as, you know, $28,000 through crowdfunding, which is going an awfully long way towards the down payment on a house. Not so much here in San Francisco. It would be a very, very small house. But, you know, these are some of the options that, you know, for folks with disabilities have just never been an option before. And so, you know, it's something else we would like to highlight. And then somebody also mentioned the California Working Disabled Program. You know, the nice thing about that program is that, as many folks in the room probably know, it allows folks to earn up to, you know, $59,000 and still receive full Medicaid. There's sort of a sliding scale way to pay for the Medicaid, but still you get full Medicaid. And there is a way to save under that program in a retirement vehicle, like a 401k or an IRA or an SEP, which is great, but those come with their own rules. But ABLE really gives someone in one of these programs the opportunity to save, basically for whatever they want. Whether it's for home ownership, maybe to pay rent, transportation, education, you name it. I think one of the things that ABLE really does is it puts the power in the hands of the person with the disability to figure out what's important to them and what they want to save for. And this allows folks in the California Working Disabled Program to really be able to put money aside without worrying about benefits, again, for the first time ever. Really glad that the thing about the Medicaid clawback got touched on. Really excited about, is it SB 218, which would eliminate that clawback in California. But sort of just one more thing to hit on, because this has come up in a lot of the technical assistance that we've done, is that the money contributed, like if you're working and you have a disability and you contribute money to your ABLE account, that money still is counted as income for the purposes of SSI calculation or the purposes of income tax or from the purposes of housing. The income piece still gets counted even though the ABLE account is outside the asset limit. So it's just sort of an important thing to hit on while we talk about this. Again, I just want to thank all you guys for being here. At WID, we're all about asset building. On our website, you can find Equity, which is the first book on building assets for people with disabilities, available on our website. Or if you want to go to the Kindle store, it's available there. We appreciate that too. But again, want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks, Spike, Independent Living Resource Center, and the LightHouse for being here. And it's great to be here today. And I will turn it back over to Spike.
Why don't you hold that?
I'll hold that.
Let's see. So I have some data and some structure here that I'm going to talk about that really provides a bit of the, I guess, platform and purpose of why FDIC is really engaged. And we're really delighted to work with Tom and Scott and Jesse in helping to organize discussion. And then after we do that, we really hope that as deep and knowledgeable as I know Tom and all the other partners are, definitely the more we can hear from all of you in the audience to really make this interactive is where we really would like to see everyone engaging and continue to talk about, what are the takeaways from the discussion here, what may come next and be some future opportunities to discuss. There we go. So as an agency, we really focus in community development around 5 key areas, but in what we call an economic inclusion ladder. Inclusion basically being really access and opportunity, starting and really focusing on financial education, insured access to safe, affordable accounts, consumer credit and access and asset building, small business access to capital and technical assistance, and affordable housing and affordable mortgage credit. So we really see the different array of engagement points for individuals and consumers as they interface with financial education and financial service needs. Really, since 2009, the FDIC created a survey to evaluate every 2 years the state of the unbanked and underbanked population throughout the United States. By unbanked, we mean consumers that do not have any formal relationship with an insured financial institution. Unbanked means they have some relationship with an institution, but they still rely on alternative banking services like check cashing, payday lending, prepaid cards, other types of services that may be outside the formal, insured bank and credit union system. And through this evaluation and collaboration with a number of different organizations, I know I work with Tom and working with the National Disability Institute, the data that kind of talked about really the context of this population was very stark. So among household headed by a working age adult with a disability. 46% were unbanked or underbanked, compared to 27% of all households. Among households headed by a working age adult with a disability, the unbanked rate was 17.6% compared to 7%. And so we saw that there were a number of different areas where there were just really big differences between the data among your traditional household across all demographic information, age, gender, geography, in compared to communities and populations with disabilities. And when you talk to people that were in this cohort, a majority of these folks that were unbanked reported they believe that banks were not at all interested in serving households like theirs. So there's a perception in the community that really helps to reinforce or exacerbate the differences in the utilization of banks and credit unions. Some sort of key headline information that was noted through all the survey information. People with disabilities are less likely to have a savings account, save for unexpected expenses. They're more likely to use bank tellers and prepaid cards, more likely to use alternative financial services, and they are twice as likely to have no credit whatsoever. So as an agency, we felt it was really important to engage in this data research information and determine what ways we can effectively engage collaboration discussion between different partners to bridge some of these divides to support the communities that would benefit from greater access to the banking services and low-cost services. And we're trying to do this through a number of different ways. Partnerships, enhancing resources that we currently offer, identifying products and practices, and integration. So we're working across multiple different levels to try to work to understand the needs of these populations that we're working with, explore opportunities to help meet the needs of those areas, as well as growing areas of research and investment, analyzing what's really taking place nationally that are best practices. And really working to collaborate with league organizations. I'm really delighted to work with Tom here locally, but Tom's also working with FDIC on a national level to help us be really proactive and impactful in the work we're trying to do. Engaging and enhancing financial education resources. We're collaborating with the CFPB to link their Your Money, Your Goals platform with our Money Smart financial education curriculum. Those who aren't aware, FDIC's Money Smart financial education curriculum has been around since 2001, emphasizes subject matter and material, anything from basic banking, education, credit services, access to credit products, a very basic to more complex array of financial services information, and it's focused for tailored curriculum for adults, young adults, older adults, small businesses, focused on youth. So there's an array of different structures and population focuses that it can benefit. We're also working internally to train internal FDIC staff members to identify how we could best understand, collaborate, and support people with disabilities in the work that we do. We're expanding our alliance, which is essentially a national network seeking to engage financial education and community development work to support people with disabilities. And we're also redesigning our FDIC Money Smart for Adults financial education curricula to be more interactive and accessible for people with disabilities, and include more broad content to include public benefits, ABLE accounts, mobile banking, and employ some universal design principles to make it more usable across different groups of folks. As far as products and services, we have talking about ABLE accounts, obviously, is something we've discussed today, but also the importance of linking low-cost transaction accounts, similar to work happening around Bank On coalitions. Here in San Francisco, there's Bank On San Francisco, which is really focused on addressing and meeting the needs of the unbanked and underbanked populations by connecting low, no-cost products and services to those folks, and really to fund an ABLE account. It acts as an account, but to provide deposits in, there needs to be a checking account or savings account as the base of that to link money to that account. So it's really important not just to consider opening the account, but having the relationship with a bank or credit union to establish a relationship to then do that yourself as far as being able to link those accounts to fund your ABLE account. The CDFI also created a $3 million fund to help target people with disabilities on a national level. So as we kind of work with different partners, we're seeing different agencies and different groups trying to provide support and engage in the discussion to see where are the innovations and the best practices coming from to support this work. We're working around financial resources for affordable housing in this area. I know a few people have already mentioned that today. And there's, in the services side, there's growing innovations around customer service, marketing innovations, and other initiatives that groups are taking, and banks as well, around better accessibility to banks. There's actually a bank in the South that has undertaken an initiative to customize branches and staff training to better serve communities and populations with autism and families with autism in their areas. Some unique innovations that we're seeing in different places and different, not just community service based efforts, but institutions identifying effective and positive business imperatives and justifications for trying to engage some of these populations that are really effective and positive for the institutions as well as the communities they're seeking to serve. And lastly, as far as integration with organizations nationally, we're seeking to organize summits and different meetings similar to this, helping to engage and connect with financial institutions in particular to talk about and help highlight those unique innovations and opportunities that are taking place nationwide that may be able to be scalable in local areas. We're also working with, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the WIOA, employment organizations in different markets, at least throughout the West that we work in, to identify linkages between ABLE and programs that can support people with disabilities, and integrating them nationally with with Bank On programs and with Alliances for Economic Inclusion, which is our coalitions that FDIC forms on a nationwide basis. So kind of leave this as an opportunity for discussion in areas to further collaborate. There are a number of different areas we may continue to look to do. We're obviously going to continue to build data. We're going to continue to try to talk about what are the best practices and innovations going on. Certainly one of the values we always try to bring is to take what's happening in other places and help market and communicate those here, that not all things work in all places, but there's opportunities to learn from those things to inform local, regional programming and potential partnership opportunities. We're helping to develop national webinars to help really build and communicate this information, and really help to build upon some of the successful efforts that are taking place on a national level through groups that are seeking to build on this and bring them, kind of drill down as much as we can on a local level to help build partnerships and encourage collaboration that can best support and serve to make sure low and no cost products can lower the costs for many things for people that have limited income, limited resources, best to help ensure they can climb the economic ladder and have a fulfilling and improving economic stance to do the things that they want to do in life. Any questions? That's all from me. But we've got a lot of time for questions. We really want to get your feedback. We want to get your thoughts. We want to hear what some of your takeaways are. We want to hear what some next steps or opportunities you think from some of this information about the context of the unbanked, underbanked population, the context of ABLE accounts, I guess integration into the region here and how that will have potential benefits, potential asset building opportunities and areas that you guys see as what comes next. Michael.
Spike, this presentation today was not what I expected it to be, but it's really sorely needed. And I was thinking more along the lines of maybe affordable housing development for the visually impaired or special disability groups. Couple questions I had in listening to Christina's presentation. There was one asterisk in one of the pages that I think it read something to the effect, the mission is currently being vetted by stakeholders before board approval. I wanted to find out if she could maybe elaborate more on what that vetting process is and what is the approval what are the milestones in the timeline that we're looking at?
Well, I know Christina had to step out. I don't know if Tom or anyone else feels comfortable to share a little bit on kind of what the inner workings of the Cal Able board.
I certainly can't speak for the board, but I do know that I think Christina said she'd done, 311 of these sort of presentations, getting impact from the community. I think what's happening at this point is that with a real commitment to customer service and guidance by the community, they're trying to build what is arguably sort of the most protections into any ABLE account, certainly that is currently available now. As far as timeline goes, that keeps changing a little bit, but I have heard this year, certainly by the end of this year.
Yeah, and they have a board that if you go to their website, it lists all the members of their board, and it's focused on finalizing the infrastructure. So the board itself, I believe, is who vets the decisions that Christina and her team help to implement the details and policy and practice, and then they have a board that which oversees and helps to set and approve the actions and ultimate structures that the entity will come to fruition.
Just a follow-up, we seem to be in an environment now where previous legislation is being repealed. If this is actually approved, or is there a date certain for it to sunset? And if there was action to dissolve this program, what would that mean for the people who had actually saved assets that would exceed if they reverted back to the old $2,000 limit?
I don't think there's any re-analysis date or reauthorization date in there. I think it was this legislation to establish the structure itself, but I don't believe it put any time stamps, and it's good for 10 years and then needs to be reauthorized or something like that. If that's kind of the meat of your question. That being said, anything that could be passed can be repealed. I think was so, but I don't know that I've heard anything about. Tom?
Yeah, no, I think we're on pretty safe water for the ABLE Act. It had very strong bipartisan support. That said, the three ABLE adjustment bills that Christina made reference to has a pretty significant CBO score, so I'm not holding my breath on those.
And that's to expand the age qualification?
Age, increase contributions to $25,000 for people who are working with a disability, and 529 rollovers.
Yes.
Being from APS and seeing a lot of consumer fraud, I'm wondering if there are any fraud protections built into this kind of bill in terms of, let's see, what can I think of? Like a whole little industry developing around this. People advertising will help you set up an ABLE account for so-and-so amount of money. Is there anything that kind of prohibits that kind of thing, or do you have any kind of work group on the horizon that may be trying to anticipate any kind of fraud that may occur with these accounts?
Tom?
I know that is a concern, and I think that's part of why things are moving slowly, particularly in California, is we want to make sure we get the strongest program we can with the largest number of protections in place. And at the same time, I knew Christina had done a bunch of presentations, but 311 in less than a year, that's almost one a day. I think there's a couple of pieces around that. One is the program that's being put together, and the other is, I think, having all the folks in the room and the community really champion, local programs and make it quite clear in the community that, there's Cal-Able and there's, I don't know, at this point, about 20 other ABLE programs across the country. And, you go through those banks or those organizations to set it up. Besides those two things, I'm not aware of other efforts to try to keep an eye on that.
The other thing I just mentioned, I know a representative from the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, reached out to me about, we didn't have a chance to speak directly, but about they had an interest in able to engage and communicate potential fraud, consumer awareness of those potential concerns and educational information that they have. So I think one of the positive things is ABLE is one of those point-in-time opportunities to integrate education. A lot of times we talk about financial education classes and talk about fraud and kind of know what you're doing and some of these different before engaging in certain different financial products and services. And so this is another opportunity in which when you're in that moment to have a new financial product or service, there's an opportunity to go, okay, let's talk about it as we're getting into it and what's going on. But there's certainly, with every new thing that happens nationally, there's some type of predatory shadow lurking somewhere, it feels like.
Yes. And if we do see like fake GoFundMe, or if we hear about and investigate and determine that there's like a fake GoFundMe page out there, apart from reporting to law enforcement, is there another regulatory agency that we would work with?
Well, I would definitely contact CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Their website has right on the homepage has I'm blanking on it right now, but it's
Complaint function?
Complaint function, thank you. Which is, by the way, the name of my next band.
It's a good one.
And it's fully accessible, and they're really responsive. And like the FDIC, CFPB is doing a lot of work around disability right now, and ABLE is something they are quite aware of. So I think they would respond quite quickly to something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Does the Lighthouse have a nonprofit network that they would work with to continue financial literacy, if you will, as this product is further developed? The issue of fraud came up. I think that's a really good one, but there are probably going to be more issues to discuss, especially that $475,000 cap, I think, is important on how to maybe maximize, go beyond the $14,000 per year. If you're looking to save up for a house, how do you really make that happen structurally?
This is Scott with the Lighthouse, and we definitely want to continue to have these sorts of conversations and be able to pass all of this information along to those who need it directly and to those who work with those who need it directly. This is the first sort of event like this that we really have been a part of, and we're excited to do it. So we're, I feel already like we're working with a network of folks with World Institute on Disability and the FDIC and ILRC. And if that grows, all the better. So certainly we plan to be very much a part of this as things continue to evolve.
And just sort of around that as well, CFPB has just designed and is just rolling out next month a disability version of their Your Money, Your Tools financial education toolkit. I think I can say this. The FDIC is also working on revising their Money Smart curriculum to really reach the disability community more in depth with tools and examples that really relate. And then lastly, around this stuff, the WIOA regulations that went into effect this year that a few people have mentioned have 9 specific financial education goals as part of that legislation. One of which is to sort of safeguard and to educate people about financial scams and stuff like that. So, as somebody who's been working on this stuff for, well, longer than I care to admit, it really feels like right now, more is going on around financial empowerment in the disability community than ever has.
Curious questions out there, and I say this from as a person who's only been engaged in this subject matter for the last 18 months or so. I know before that, I don't think anyone ever in the bank on or financial stability world or the different networks that I'm part of really elevated this discussion about disability at all. So I was really enlightened to begin digging into the research there. As you guys look around the room and see some people you know, some people you don't, whether it's San Francisco or the broader networks that you guys work with, who are the different groups that you think are part of, should be part of this discussion on a broader level, but that are like maybe you don't see here today that you maybe you work with or you affiliated with in some way?
I think some of the nonprofit, I would say the umbrella organizations, Housing California, if Greenlining, California Reinvestment Coalition, these are groups that really focus on affordable housing and integrated social services, be they workforce development, childcare, education. And I've worked a lot with groups that when you look at what a nonprofit affordable housing or a social enterprise does, they will focus on reentry programs. They'll focus on people with mental disabilities, people with HIV and AIDS, transition age youth, but never do you really hear people talk about, well, we're going to do X project for, and I'll just use the visually impaired community as an example. I've never seen any action taken that focuses on that particular segment. So I think raising the visibility so that people know that there is a paradigm shift, if you will, when you mention the FDIC's and the CFPB's curriculum changing to include material for the disabled communities. I think that's something that the more you can increase visibility through trade organizations and to be on these panels when they have their state conventions and all, it would be, I think, a tremendous opportunity.
So I'm associated to a nonprofit organization. One of them is in a supportive housing space, and the other one is a mental health self-run, peer-run organization, and in both of those areas, very few people come to us. We have to go and seek out information about this stuff. And I mean, today people, they don't necessarily go to a large group or a large organization. They self organize, either online or to a support group and stuff like that. There are at least 6 supportive housing organizations just in San Francisco alone, where people could use this information, and people don't get employed because, oh, this is going to affect my benefits, or I can't have more than $2,000 anyway, so why bother? Which means that there are a lot of people who are on public benefits
that could possibly transition and have something to hope and live for instead of, you know, being where they're at. Thank you.
I would say one of the places you need to look into is positive resources. Also, the mayor's office on disability, which is downstairs.
Is Positive Resources a organization?
Disability organization for people with HIV and AIDS.
Resource Center.
The only suggestion I may have is just have brochures available in public places, you know, banks, organizations.
Yeah, we have one of these as well that I know the treasurer from the treasurer's office that we'll try to send out as well. It's a little flyer. I feel they're kind of in a holding pattern. They definitely want to like launch and then have all the new materials that got all their stuff for that. But we'll help to share some of that as around to help build awareness after the meeting.
I'd like. I work with the Federal Home Loan Bank and run an economic development grant program. I want to second what Michael had said. We fund a lot of workforce development programs, and a lot of the groups are working with persons with disabilities. And so, to me, that seems like a great point in time for this program because you have a banking and a financial education opportunity tied to these accounts. So, I'll follow up with you, Spike. Got a good group of folks to share this information with in California, Nevada, and Arizona.
And do you want to talk a little bit more about what are the grant programs that you?
Well, we run three main grant programs. One's for multifamily housing, larger grant programs. We run the Wish and Idea programs, which are down payment assistance programs, which also will marry nice with this program because the savings that persons can do with this program, one of our member banks can be able to match those savings. So that'll marry nice. And then the AHEAD program is our economic development grant program, which is a pretty wide description, a lot of different uses of that program, but a big part of it is job training, financial education, workforce development. And we have been seeing, to kind of back up what some other folks have said, the last couple of years we've starting to see a lot more applications from groups that are working on employment issues with persons with disabilities. So we're happy to support those groups.
And those are applications that you had said you've been seeing the last few years?
Yeah, it seems like a trend that we're starting to see. We funded a group in Sacramento, Meristem, that does some great work. The Beacon Group in Phoenix is doing some great work as well. So, but there are a few more. I'll just have to go back and get them for you.
Oh, go ahead.
So I work with Bank on San Francisco. I work with Bank on San Francisco, so thank you for mentioning us. I just wanted to let everyone know that we are relaunching Bank on 2.0 end of summer, beginning of fall, and with that work, we are taking some deep dives into specific populations that we haven't paid a lot of attention to in the past. So a lot of our work right now has been looking at people who are undocumented immigrants or don't have social security numbers, but may be U.S. citizens or in other status groups. And I think our next deep dive is going to be around people with disabilities and people who are older and looking at different types of retirement savings. This ABLE account is really exciting news, so I just wanted to put myself out there as somebody that is looking to learn more as we relaunch Bank On. So afterwards, please feel free to come up and talk to me. I am a person with a disability, but I know that there's a lot out there that I don't know, and I would love to be able to bring other viewpoints back to my office for this program.
I think when you talk about asset building, it's important to include Prosperity Now, formerly CFED. I know that I didn't see anyone from the list who'd registered, so perhaps they would like the information as well.
That's great. Yeah, we do a lot of work with Prosperity Now. And actually last year and next year, we're helping make their big conference in DC more accessible to and inclusive of folks with disabilities. But that's a great suggestion. They do great work.
That's where I met Tom in person last year. Yeah. I apparently was not memorable for you.
You all look alike.
Other questions?
I just wanted to mention that as a resource, I worked at one of the free tax sites with Mission Economic Development Association. And there were some bank representatives that would actually come down to the sites to speak with or be available to speak with anybody who was marginally banked or unbanked. So that was a legitimate, opportunity for people to become more familiar with the banker and with the possible bank.
Okay. Yes.
If you're looking at financial health building, you might also want to look at Spark Point centers.
Spark Point Center. Spark Point Centers.
Yeah, they do a lot with credit building, asset building, debt reduction, kind of the whole financial package.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I think we've had my first engagement really with Able accounts and this subject matter was very new to me. I know the first time I talked about Tom, I'm someone who, like Christine, don't have a disability and had some different assumptions and uncertainties of kind of how, what's the language and specifically what we're talking about here. So it's definitely been like a really deep dive learning experience in different areas here. Talking a lot about the need to create awareness and continue, I think, to engage different partners to really talk about the different ways that we can integrate financial education, connect more people to products and services that will benefit them, integrate asset building and other types of programmatic activity to help people not just save but build more assets to better support what their goals are in life. What do you think comes next? Certainly, FDIC, as we've talked about, not just from our work in community affairs, but agency-wide, we've really been deeply trying to engage independently, both and collectively with other groups. And certainly this isn't a topic that we seek to just come, have a nice gathering and won't be talked about again. We want to continue working with all of you. What do you think would come next? What do you think is an opportunity to further this conversation, to build upon some of the things talked about today, either on a broad level or more specifically to things that are really within the track that you may be working on a day-to-day basis?
I was just wondering if you can come out and speak at ILRC for our consumers, because right now you're speaking to people from agencies and to get to the people who are really going to use the product.
We're preaching to the choir a little bit today. Yeah.
Spike, I think there are two tracks here where the nonprofits will organize to try to do outreach and to see how they can collaborate. But I'm real interested in knowing more about how far apart Able was with the banks or financial institutions that responded to the RFP. And I think that perhaps an interagency meeting where you had convened by either the Federal Reserve Bank, the OCC, and the FDIC, have a convening with bankers, large and small, to really talk about where those gaps are and how can they fill those gaps. Because she mentioned in broad terms that there were, I think they didn't want to be liable, but liable to what degree? Are there any areas that can actually be saved, preserved, or maybe put together to allow the program to move forward? But I think a real a conversation with the banks regarding the inability to reach an agreement with that initial RFP would be a good start.
I'd like to echo his comments. I work for a community bank, and I'd like to offer ABLE accounts, but it didn't sound like the way it was being designed that community banks were going to be able to offer the product. We have quite a few agencies that bank with us. We have good relationships with them. I'd like to go to my customers and talk to them about offering these products to their constituents And I think community banks have a real opportunity to reach out within their community, but it didn't sound like we were going to be included in this process at all.
Can I ask real quick before to the banks in the room, are there, whether it's in specifically the RFP, but all separate sort of in the broader community development world, are there other areas that interest you or you think would be, whether as your group would be interested in exploring collectively a little bit more deeply, just as a kind of brainstorming?
Well, with credit unions, you know, we have kind of the same issues that community banks do. We're small institutions. We do have a network, so I'd say that maybe connecting with the CCUL, the California Credit Union League, may be a good place to start. But just like what you were saying, echoing your sentiments, we would like to offer a product like this, but it sounds like they're really looking for one vendor to offer the product. Which is fine, but if there's another alternative that could be more of a collective response, that would be fantastic.
It seems fairly narrow the way I guess ABLE was looking for one vendor, but I think you have to have a broad-based financial education approach where, again, nonprofits and banks, they've got CRA requirements, so the financial education piece that can take place on many levels, and there was the mention of again that 475 keeps sticking in my mind because that in a way it's where you could start it initially from the retail side, but as a private wealth management team, they may have a different approach to get to that level. So I think that there's a role for nonprofits, and there's also, it may not be the single vendor, but it could be a banking network that actually participates in really getting the word out. And trade organizations, I think LightHouse and others here on this agenda could insist with some of the larger trade groups that I think the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, known as SCAMP, they were just putting out what are workshop topics for their upcoming annual conference. I've never seen anything like this on their program or the any of the other trade organizations up and down the state.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely follow up with Christina about that. I think, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, I think nationally, accounts that are opened, that are ABLE accounts, are all established and opened at like a state entity, agency level. And then, but the sort of connection with financial institutions is to deposit any money in it. There's sort of that's the connection with financial institutions. So for an individual with disabilities to, unless for either themselves or a family member or a friend to make any deposits in there, there's a need to have a bank or credit union financial account to as the vehicle to make deposits into that. Tom, is that correct?
That's my understanding as well.
But I think the conversation, happy to talk to Christina about the RFP and that conversation to see if there's something viable there we can follow up on. Yes.
Yeah, I'll echo that, which is, for example, Ohio. I have an ABLE account through Ohio, and Ohio has a single vendor, and they have 5 investment options, which is 4 Vanguard accounts with 4 different levels of risk and potential investment reward, and then actually an FDIC insured account, and it's all operated through one vendor with a debit card, and then each different state will have different investment venues and options within them. So it's possible to kind of, ABLE NRC is a really good website to go and compare and contrast different ABLE accounts and understand what their qualities are. But I just wanted, you were talking about ways to get the word out, is I think that within the disability community, they're talking about preaching to the choir here and then reaching out to families. We've also got to recognize that there are a lot of kind of isolated individuals with disabilities that might be hanging out at home watching TV, just not even wanting to try to work or save because they're on benefits, and their families are doing the same. And there could be a great community push to reach out to public media. I watch Democracy Now! Every morning, and radio stations and things like that that will reach the public that are disconnected from service providers as, you know, more than they should be at least.
Hi, I just thought of something that maybe you reached out to the hospitals, such as UCSF, Stanford, and stuff like that, where again, people with disability, they go to doctor's appointments and stuff like that, and reach out to the different centers. UCSF have a bipolar uh, center and a depression center, and get your message in front of the next generation of doctors who are medical students right now, and interns and residents and so on, in this place.
Yes.
So, I'm wondering how the age of 26 came up. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. How did the age of 26 arbitrarily or not come up? How was that manifested?
So the original age in the original legislation, I think, was 40 or 41, and that came back with a CBO score of something like $26 billion. And when they dropped it down to 26, it came in with a CBO score of 1.9 billion. And there you go.
So do you know what the bill number is for the, to increase from 46, maybe just go back to the podium line? Do you know what the bill numbers are for that, so that I can talk to representatives?
I do not have those off the top of my head, but we can get those to you.
Yeah, Christina wasn't sure of those numbers either.
Well-
The age increase would be at a federal level, it sounds like, because the state is constrained to operate only within what the federal legislation and guidelines allowed.
So in the original legislation, it was like 26 billion down to 1.9. And, you know, I don't know the CBO number on the 46 age, but it would therefore be higher. Congressional Budget Office. They're in the news right now for some other work they've been doing that's kind of important too.
We don't want to get too deep into that.
No.
Well, we're at time here at noon. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We really appreciate you all participating and attending and engaging with us. I certainly know and that this will not be the last time. I encourage you to take any materials here you didn't, please sign in if you didn't, so we can, or provide your email addresses if you didn't register so that we can follow up with you. We have the contact sheet over here as well, so you can reach out to folks here that you maybe didn't get a chance to exchange information with and cards. We've also got food out here. Please take something to go, get on your way out. I just want to say thank you. Please also fill out that green form, the evaluation, anything you didn't want to maybe feel like sharing in an open forum like this. It's all confidential, but we'll take that to help inform sort of opinions and thoughts about what the material and was considered today and how we might best move forward as a group. So for me, I just want to close by saying thank you, and I appreciate it and look forward to continuing down this road in this broad area and see how we can be a value add to the work that you all do on a daily basis. Tom?
Thanks, everybody, for coming, and we really look forward all working together, LightHouse, ILRC, FDIC, to really changing the economic expectation for folks with disabilities. Thanks.
And thank you, Scott. Again, I'll double down on this for help allowing us to use your facility here. That I've been so busy talking, meeting people, I've rarely had a chance to have take in the view here. You guys have a great spot.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for coming. We do have the room for a few more minutes, so feel free to hang around. I think there's a fair amount of food left out there too. But mingle, get to know each other. Please say hello to those who you've heard from today, and we hope to see many of you back here sometime soon. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Let's have a hand for everybody.
I'll take that for you.
It's just indicating more than we.
Thank you.
That was great.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, we'll email out the presentations and materials from the meeting.